My channel is sponsored by Virtua One, which means you will have an ad read from them somewhere in the middle of this video. I touched on this in my Q&A yesterday, but it wasn't enough. In case you missed it, there's a whole bunch of drama surrounding Baldur's Gate 3, no small part of which involves two people that I am friends with, who I don't think know each other, but are definitely disagreeing with each other. One of them is indie dev Xavier Nelson Jr., whom I'm very fond of. I think he's awesome. The other one is IGN's Destin Legary, who I worked with for many years and am very fond of and think is awesome. And these two people have very, very different takes that I have not yet viewed all of, so we're going to dive into that today, as well as just talk about Baldur's Gate 3 in general. I personally am very confident that Baldur's Gate 3 is going to end up being my game of the year. I have barely scratched the surface. I still feel like I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. Thing that I very much like about it. But unless it's not your kind of video game, which I think is totally acceptable and very possible for a lot of people, this is quite a deep RPG. But I do feel like it is undeniably incredible quality. And I desperately hope it makes a lot of money, because at the core of this conversation, I think, and we'll get further into it, is publishers. The game makes a bunch of money, publishers will see it making a bunch of money and be like, hey, do that, and then maybe the dev studios get to go, give us 7 years, which like only a very small handful of studios can currently get away with without the publisher being like, absolutely not, you have to release it on this day when it's potentially not even ready on whatever date that is, and you only have this amount of money, there is no money left. Some fun statistics to back up the quality of Baldur's Gate 3, which like personally, I have pretty frequent frame rate drops. The loading screens are very long, but for the most part, I think the direction of this game is just incredible. They've nailed every single thing that they intended to nail. They knew what the assignment was and they stuck to it, and that's something that I think is so important for crafting like a very good experience. But the thing that gets me really enthusiastic about it is the amount of choice. I imagine if I were to watch somebody do the Goblin Cave that I just played through last night, failed, by the way. I just was like, I gotta leave and come back here later. I'm not ready for this. That I would see something completely different to what I did, and I love that in an RPG. I feel like so many games want to do that, but do not have the time or budget to do it. Baldur's Gate 3 just nailed it. I do think this game is like mind-blowingly fantastic. And that is supported by the data. Baldur's Gate 3 is currently the highest rated game on Metacritic of 2023, higher even than The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. This past Sunday, Baldur's Gate 3 also accounted for nearly 28% of total player time spent on the entirety of Steam, leading all other titles, including CSGO, which is only at 5%. This is nuts, like so unbelievably impressive. On OpenCritic, which is a very similar place to Metacritic, it is the highest rated game of all time. It is literally #1. They hit over 800,000 concurrent players on Steam. The 10 most popular games of all time on Steam. Dude, damn. And yeah, PlayStation 5 launch is coming September 6th, which for reference, I'm currently largely playing the game on controller. People have been asking me about it a lot, and it changes the perspective. So for the people wondering about playing it on PS5, I think you're gonna be totally fine. It makes combat a little bit slower, but frankly, I played this game so slowly anyway because I'm thinking so much about everything. By choice, I think I would do all exploration on controller and then swap to mouse and keyboard for combat, which you could do on a PS5 as well. But yes, I think you're gonna be great running the PS5 version. And that's part of this that I think is also really important, is like this game being the quality that it is. There are so many more studios. This is certainly a thing that happened to CD Projekt Red, where everyone who was playing the game early and previewing it was talking about it really positively because we were playing a PC build. Obviously, launch, the quality dropped a little bit even from the previews, but it was still reviewed really well by people who played it on PC because it ran well on PC. That game never should have come out on console the same day. What Baldur's Gate 3 has done, or what Larian has done, is just delay the other versions until they're ready. So the PC version had 3 years early access. That is 3 years of bug fixes, effectively a large beta test. That's what early access really is, to get it to the point where it is now. And they had nobody telling them that they had to release it on PlayStation or Xbox on the same day. So PS5 is scheduled for September 6th, and I have no doubt that they would just push it if it wasn't ready. And then I believe they said Xbox would be like some point later down the line, like whenever it's ready to do that. And that's just the dream for so many dev studios. Like the truth is virtually every dev studio wants to be able to do that, just not a lot of them can. Publishers like, nope, get it out. You got to get it out right now. You got to get it at this date. We got to make our money back by this time because of the stock market and the shareholders. And I love that this is working. And I so badly hope that these console versions are also really polished again, so that the Baldur's Gate 3 win can like literally help the whole industry. Like every dev studio gets to be like, see, if you just give us a little more time. So clearly, I think this game is fantastic. The audience consensus is that it is extremely popular. The critic consensus is that it is fantastic. Why is there drama? So I think this Twitter thread is what kicked it off. I've seen people say multiple devs have said negative things about Baldur's Gate 3. Austin mentioned that to me on Play Watch Listen. I wasn't actually able to find any of that, as also said in my Q&A. Maybe it exists somewhere. I couldn't find any of it. I've in fact only found devs saying extremely positive things about Baldur's Gate 3. So this is the Twitter thread from Zalavia Nelson Jr. Again, he's quite well known in the indie space. He is not a AAA game dev, but I have not read this thread, which I think has kicked off some of this controversy. So let's do that. So the thread says, like a lot of people, I'm deeply excited about what the lovely folks at Larian accomplished with Baldur's Gate 3, but I want to gently preemptively push back against players taking that excitement and using it to apply criticism or a raised standard to RPGs going forward. Which, immediately, I probably would not have used that sentence. I definitely understand why people are upset about that phrasing. I think telling gamers that they shouldn't have high standards is never going to go down well, and is also unfair, but at the same time, this sounds like a pretty realistic take. Said, you can't separate a game from the process used to build it, so let's look at what Larian is taking into the development of the final version of the game. 1, a dev cycle stretching back to 2017. 2 massive games and their definitive editions worth of tech and institutional knowledge to draw from. Super successful early access period lasting 3 years, providing crucial community feedback, bug hunting, and cash flow, also true. Over 400 developers in 7 offices around the world. That's so nuts, man. Like, it's just... So 400 developers is a lot, to be clear. Most AAA game studios don't even have 400 developers if you're not including outsourcing partners. License the brand in the world and one of the largest entertainment IPs in the world, D&D, at the apex of its popularity with the rise of the actual play movement and movies. This is a small, incomplete list. Larian is coming into this game swinging with a gigantic weight of expectation to deal with, but they're also doing it with an immense amount of wind, direct experience, resources, specialty tooling, etc. at their backs. The TLDR, in the era of mega games, Baldur's Gate 3 is one of the largest attempted, built by a specialized group of people using mature tech, specially built to make this specific game, reinforced by invaluable mass player feedback and market validation ahead of its launch. That is objectively true. This is not a new baseline for RPGs, this is an anomaly. Trying to do the same thing in the same way, especially without the advantages, could kill an entire group of studios. This is also true. Baldur's Gate 3 is an anomaly. I, once again, can understand why people are pushing back against this, because it shouldn't be. And that's the truth. Baldur's Gate 3 shouldn't be an anomaly. It shouldn't be the case that it could kill an entire group of studios, but it could. People have probably attempted to make things just like Baldur's Gate 3 many times and failed. Larian has a fantastic, talented team who had time and money on their side. I'm sure they had a ton of struggles making this game as good as it is. I don't want anyone to take that away from them. It has to have been incredibly hard. I first previewed the game like years ago. It was like 3 or 4 years ago that I saw Baldur's Gate 3, which is the longest time I've ever seen between playing a game as media and the game coming out, which to me indicates that they were allowed to wait. They were allowed to hold off releasing the game, obviously, while it was in early access until it was ready. That's the part that's the anomaly and the part that sucks, and the part that I wish players would take away from this. It is time to talk about the Mature One, the world's first XR glasses designed for gamers. This is the device right here, and it is so unbelievably cool. Basically, you put these glasses on, connected to your Switch. They also have a mount for if you want to connect it to mobile, and the one I'm currently using works with Switch and Steam Deck. You pick from a couple of different nose pads, put them on, adjust the lenses to suit your face. Took me maybe 20 seconds to do. And then you have inside of these glasses a pixel-free 1080, 60 frames a second screen. This is so impressive. I can't believe the screen quality. I guess it's not a screen, it's XR, but it's like perfect quality. There's also a button for color changing film, so you can change the background darkness without affecting the brightness of a screen. Plus you can change the screen brightness, change the audio, and I will say the audio is really, really good. The speakers are basically just hiding like here on the sides of the glasses. They partnered with Harman for that, I know. And another incredibly cool thing about it is that it allows for co-op. I'm currently, I don't know if you can see it in there. See how tiny it looks, but obviously it's a big screen. First thing I wanted to try was Zelda. But if you have 2 pairs of glasses, you can connect them both to the same system, and you can play co-op with the glasses. It also has extra battery for the Switch and the Steam Deck. So if you want to get yours, click the link in the description and use code Alanah to get 10% off your very own Virtual One glasses. Like some of the tweets that I've seen floating around about this, people saying, oh, look, game devs making excuses because players expect good games, or like game devs are just lazy. Like there are so many of those that just fundamentally misunderstand. And I said this in a video yesterday, and even then people were like, clearly this isn't true because look at the state of this game. I don't think there's a single dev studio on the planet outside of the ones that are like objectively shovelware scams, like those PlayStation ripoff games that I covered recently. There is no dev studio on the planet that wants anything other than to make a good game. What I just said is not controversial. It is not a hot take. You should not take it as such. It is just a fact. And if you'd come back to me and say, well then why is the game broken? The reason that games come out broken, and I really think this happened to Cyberpunk, is not because of the dev team. I promise you, when you work on something for 5, 7, 10 years, it's your legacy. It's your life. All you care about is that thing being good. It consumes you for years and years and years, and it's hard and it's frustrating, and all you want is for it to work and be good and for people to like it. Otherwise, you do fucking anything else. So I know it sounds like a basic take, but a lot of people clearly still don't know. The reason that games come out in any lesser state is not because game devs don't care or are lazy. Trust me, they want to make the best game possible. It's because they have a publisher they have to answer to, and there's nothing that they can do about that. If a publisher says, nope, this has to come out this month, this quarter, which is usually because the publisher is answering to the stock market or to shareholders who will literally pull their money out if they don't get a return on investment after a certain amount of time, and thus, like, you could literally shut the whole company down. The publisher mandates the date, and the devs do their very, very, very best to get the thing in the best quality possible before that date. Budget is also a huge thing. That is not something the dev studio controls. They just have like all of these pieces, and they have certain people with certain skill sets, and people can still quit and leave whenever they want to, and they just all come together, and a publisher says, this amount of money by this time, go. And part of why, you know, it not being a new baseline for RPGs, it being an anomaly, which again, I think is true, even though it is like objectively shitty. Part of this conversation that I always want to talk about is that it's objectively shitty for the gamers and the devs. The ideal here would be that devs, who are often also angry at their publishers but aren't allowed to say so, and gamers are on the same team versus the publishers. Because there's all this weird discourse there where like the gamers hate the journalists hate the devs hate the gamers. Like it's just such a bad landscape when really the big bad publisher is like off having a great time because all these people are squabbling amongst each other, the people have no actual control. Those people would unified and put pressure on the people who actually make the decisions. I feel like the whole industry would be way better off. Very convenient for them that that's not what happens. This is what makes Baldur's Gate 3 an anomaly, is that they seemingly did not have that same amount of pressure that a lot of AAA dev studios have. Again, also not taking away their incredible amounts of experience. The fact that the games they make, it goes beyond that. Like, I view them in the same league as I view like FromSoft and Platinum at this point. Like it is a part of it that's being spoken about here, and it is an undeniable part of it, but it is also just like they clearly have an excellent, very experienced team of brilliant designers and brilliant directors who know exactly what they're doing and are so good at executing it. I really don't want to take that away from them. My point is not to discredit Larian at all. It's more just to fight against the notion that every other dev is bad or lazy when that is like objectively not the case. Sorry, to continue the tweet thread. If they go bigger or better with their next title, Larian themselves could die. That's the risk and reward of a mega game. Also true. We're in an industry dangling elephants over cliffs, pointing at the ones that don't collapse under their own weight as indictments to the ones that do. So please celebrate the achievement represented by Baldur's Gate 3. It looks like a massive amount of effort is about to pay off in a big way for one of the brightest voices in the medium. Beautiful thing to say. He's right. But if you shout every RPG should be like this going forward, you have no excuse. He said you've not just missed the point, you've created the expectations and conditions to ensure your favorite creators may never be able to give you the thing you love ever again. Damn. So then I did watch like the first minute of Destin's video on IGN, so let me look that up. Again, Destin, also a friend, and this headline is Baldur's Gate 3 is causing some developers to panic. Let's watch it.
Baldur's Gate 3 is taking the internet by storm. At its peak, a whopping 800,000 plus concurrent players. The gaming community has sung its praises, and it's incredibly refreshing to play a feature-complete game of this caliber on day one. But AAA game developers want you to know that this is rockstar level nonsense for scope.
Hang on, I gotta read this one. I would not be surprised if this was more dev effort than the next 2 or 3 games in the genre combined. It's rockstar level nonsense for scope. Only a few studios could even try this. I cannot wait to play, but this kind of effort likely won't be replicated this decade. Again, I wish people would phrase things just a little more thoughtfully. Is it Rockstar level nonsense for scope? Probably. It is an amount of scope that most studios aren't allowed to pursue. Ryan McCabe said, this is a great thread about why using a singular game to set expectations for everyone developing titles in a genre isn't useful and is instead foolhardy.
That it's foolhardy to set expectations higher, and Baldur's Gate 3 should not be used as a raised standard to RPGs going forward. Why was the first response to defend the current state of AAA gaming as opposed to saying, hey, maybe we can learn a thing or two from Baldur's Gate 3 and make our game better for our customers?
Can I give you just like one like real insider thing? When every new AAA game comes out, devs play them. You know, devs are gamers too, right? And then they all go to work the next day and be like, we should do something more like Elden Ring. That's like a meme for game devs, is that everybody goes to the office while playing Elden Ring and then pitches everything to do with Elden Ring. Trust me. It is so well known that every dev ever is currently playing Baldur's Gate 3 and pitching systems from Baldur's Gate 3 for the game they're working on. I promise. It's literally an industry meme.
Are we really going to pretend that consumers shouldn't be a little upset right now and hoping for an improvement in the industry going forward?
No.
Rockstar just announced
that part, Destin's 100% right. You should have raised standards and you should demand better. You should. It just doesn't necessarily do anything. That's the problem. Capitalism.
$50 conversion of the original Red Dead Redemption for the PlayStation 4 and Switch that has no mention of a 4K update, no mention of 60 FPS, and no mention of multiplayer support.
But you know who's to blame?
13 years.
You know who's to blame for the Red Dead Redemption 2 Switch port? Not Rockstar. Rockstar didn't work on it. Rockstar didn't have anything to do with it. Take-Two. It's the publisher.
Remember, that tweet was made nearly a month before Baldur's Gate 3 blew up, and it was still contentious with fans speaking up about their frustrations and developers chiming in to say what felt like game development is hard, you don't get it, be quiet. Baldur's Gate 3 is a game from a large, passionate studio that refuses to add microtransactions.
Again, refuses to add microtransactions as a plus. I would have a lot of trouble working on a game without microtransactions. That is a massive privilege and anomaly, again, right? Like, that is a huge win for Larian that I'm sure a lot of studios would love to have. It doesn't work that way. If your publisher tells you you have to have microtransactions, the alternative is you fucking get shut down. Look, Destin is 100% right in that players should always expect more. And I very strongly think that players should expect more. And I disagree with any dev who would share the sentiment that players should expect less. I think players should ask for more. And I do think that repeatedly games should be held accountable when things do not meet player expectations, that I do think that people should be loud about it. I don't think it's something that should just be tolerated. But I also think that Destin has missed the point a little bit here. Devs can hold themselves to whatever high standard they want. And can take whatever inspiration they want and can try to make the best thing on the planet that doesn't give them more budget, doesn't give them more staff, and it doesn't give them more time, which are the things that are really needed to make a video game.